Do you guys want to see what happens when you put too much pressure on a horse, compounded by being completely out of position? Well, stick around. I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did wrong. All right, welcome back to Becky Amio Horse Training, and this is part 2 of getting back on a colt for the first time that's had 4 months off. If you remember from part 1, this guy was he's a 3-year-old stud. I started him in the fall of 2020. If you didn't see part 1, I encourage you to go back. I'll share the link in the description box. Now we're starting to move his feet a little bit more. In this part of the video, we're asking him for the lope, and I'm still asking for that emergency stop. Look at how this horse wants to slow down already. He wants to come to a stop. He's got this figured out that when I run my hands up his neck as a pre-cue, bend my hand wide and out to my thigh, he's coming down to a stop and he's bending around and changing directions. Remember, the reason we're doing this is for safety. We're just reminding him of all the stuff that we worked on with him when I first started him, okay? And this colt had about 35 rides scattered throughout fall and early winter, okay? And so every time he comes down to a stop, I'm going to reach back and pet on his butt. I'm going to rub him on his head and his neck. And I let him play game over for just a little bit. And I'm going to pick him up in collection rein, so I'm going to take a little bit more contact with my reins on this bit, okay, when I ask him now, and I'm going to start asking him for rollaways. So now I'm changing the game a little bit, and this is a game that he knows, but it's different than the game that we've been playing. And if you want a more specific video on these maneuvers, there's lots of videos that I've done already. I can link them in the description box as well, showing this particular maneuver. We're just rolling him into the fence. I'm going to sit back and spank him on the butt as I leave. Now I'm rolling him into the fence rather than into the center of my arena. I'm still giving him the pre-cue, like, hey, we're getting ready to do something, but now I'm reaching down on that inside rein to take him back towards the rail. And he's starting to cheat here a little bit on me. You know, he's not quite staying on the rail real good. I was trying to keep him off the rail a little bit as I came around in front of the camera because the Pivo camera kind of gets upset when I get too close to it on the rail. And so he was kind of taking advantage of that there too and dropping his shoulder in a little bit to the center of my round pen rather than staying close to that rail. And he's also quite a bit bigger horse and he needs a little bit more room on this rail. So all I'm doing here is I'm going up his neck, bend him to the right, to the inside of the rail, and then roll him, and then ask him to speed up as he comes out, just like I have in previous videos. Now, I try to get his feet moving as fast as I can. I mean, obviously, we're not galloping, okay? But the faster I can make his feet work, the faster he's going to learn it. The more coordinated he's going to get, the better in timing he and I are both going to get together. This guy's going to obviously move a whole lot differently than somebody smaller than him, and he's got to get comfortable in his body. So I'm looking for footwork here. I'm looking for him to follow his nose, move his shoulder, plant his hind end, and then take off and elope for me. And now he's cheating me just a little bit. You know, you could see he's swinging his butt out. We're going to slow-mo those maneuvers down just a little bit and really take a good look at him here in a second. Now I get a really good one right here. He plants that inside leg as he rolls out of it and takes the lope right away. He breaks back down the trot, but that's okay. He's getting tired. I recognize that, and so I'm going to let him play game over here real quick. And I'm going to speed up through all of this. You guys don't need to be bored by just playing game over with this horse, walking, letting him cool out, let him catch his breath. No big deal. I considered deleting all this, but you guys need to realize, you know, in real world, we have to let our horses rest. And now I pick up my reins again, and I get ready to ask for the same maneuvers again with him. Now this time I have collection, I have contact with his face, and I'm asking him for the rollaway on the rail, and I'm asking him for the halt. Now, we can see with this one, he's kicking his leg to the outside, that he's planting on the hind right instead of the hind left, and he's swinging his butt around. He loses all of his power, all of his strength in that turn by doing that. I put him right into another one, and I pick up my stick and I spank him on the butt. Let me tell you, this is going to come back to haunt me right now. So I set him up for the stop. I give him the halt signal. I go to roll him, and I want to quicken up his feet a little bit. He's getting tired. He's getting a little lazy on me, a little lethargic. And I reach up and I spank him on the hind end, and then look at what those hind feet are doing. His hocks are hanging out behind him. Neither one are planting, and he's just kind of moving on his forehand there, okay? So I wanted to point that out to you because this horse has a lot of feel. I've used him for another video to show turn on the forehand and show, you know, how I begin to teach a side pass. And so he does have quite a bit of feel, and that spanking him on the butt with the stick is going to come back to haunt me here in a second. So here he spins all right. He wants to lope off. He lopes off really nice, taking the correct lead. This horse has a lot of elevation and impulsion already in him. And see, he's wanting to cheat me there. He's wanting to drop his shoulder. So I go ahead and take my leg into him, and I shove his hip around and put him back on that rail and try to get him back over close to it. Rather than trying to take my outside rein and steer him back over to the rail, I'm just going to bend him around my leg. That's all I did there. So the next time here, I go to put him in a halt and ask him for that rollaway. I don't completely commit to rocking him back on the hind end, and I tried to use my stick, and instead he went the direction that he was leaning towards, which was that front left foot. So let's watch it again in slow motion. I set him for the halt. He's on the forehand, and instead of backing him up a step, I tried to put him in a turn, and he started to step back, but he put the weight on that front left. And look at what direction he's going to go. What direction do you guys think he's going to go? I go to put my stick into him, and then I'm leaning off to the right like I am. Of course, this horse is going to jump to the left. But this is why you need a good core, and you need a set of obliques and a strong leg on these horses. Otherwise, you wouldn't stay centered on them when they do this. So I'm just going to bend him back around my leg and set him right back up to the position again and make sure we get it done correctly. Let's slow-mo down again. I'm going to set him up. This time I'm going to hold him. I'm going to slow the whole maneuver down, not just slow-mo the video, and ask him to take the step back, get correct in my body, in my movement. This time I'm leaning away from the turn. I've got the leg into him, and we've got the weight on the hind end, on the inside hind. I've got the nose tipped properly, and now he can take off at a lope or a trot, and he does. So now I've freed up his front end. So let's compare that again. Look at the difference between where his weight was. We can't expect them to do these maneuvers when we're not set up properly, let alone have them set up properly. We have to continually reevaluate our own horsemanship to get this done on these horses. So we take off in a lope, and we go ahead and go around, and I'm going to set him up again. I'm going to give him the pre-cue, and this time I'm going to give him a little bit more time before we ask for the stop. And when he comes out of this one, he jumps out cross-firing. Watch this again. If you guys are not familiar with cross-firing, is when they're disunited with the hind leg. See how that right leg came forward instead of the hind left? And now somewhere in here, he changes it on his own, and the pivot did not catch it. I was too close to the rail. As I said before, if I get too close to the pivot, it kind of freaks out a little bit, and it doesn't follow us really well. But somewhere over here, he fixed it on his own and was loping correctly. I let him lope around on the correct lead. I set him up again and ask him for the roll, and we roll correctly. He plants his weight on the inside right. He takes his right lead and comes around. Ask for the stop again, roll him, better this time, took the correct lead out of the turn, no crossfiring. And remember, folks, this is all the same ride, okay? This is just part 2 of the same first ride back after this horse has been off. So now we're getting more correct. He's coming in. He's stopping for me. He's keeping his hind end underneath himself. His hocks are staying underneath himself. He's keeping that inside right underneath himself, and he's spinning on that right to take off on a right lead. Look at how strong my leg is. Look at I lean to the outside of the turn, lean away from all leads and all turns to counterbalance the horse so they can carry you properly. Take off in the right lead again. Lope around. Keep his feet moving. Ask him for the stop. Lope off again. He's getting tired. I can feel it. And I get him back in the lope again. Now I can really feel him wanting to stop. He's asking me for the stop. And now I'm letting him come down. I roll him again. And I go ahead and stop him. And he's looking to turn. I kind of like the anticipation of wanting to turn, like he's asking me, well, what do I do next? But I'm finishing with a good backup. Drop my reins, pet him, and I'm going to walk him and let him cool out for just a second, catch his breath. But this is all what I would do on a first ride back on a horse that I've started that I haven't been on in about 4 months. Now, I'm going to fast forward through all of this. This is all walking, cooling out, catching his breath. There's some value to this. I can drop my reins long and low. He lowers his neck and head. He gets a really good stretch in his top line and his obliques. The last thing that I finish on is the turn on the forehand. Now, I probably should have started with this. I probably would have had a lot better rolls both directions and probably wouldn't have had to drill them as hard had I started with this technique. But I kind of felt like I needed to get his feet moving. When you get back on something for the first time after you haven't been on it for a while, you kind of just want to get their feet moving and get that experience again and kind of break the ice, so to speak, because you know, I am a little bit nervous when I get back up there, especially one of his size. So I'm getting a good turn on the forehand on him, and I release as soon as I get the steps over, pet on him, call it good with that. Pet on him, you know, make sure that he understood that I was releasing where I was. And now I'm going to try to finish up by dismounting on the barrel that I mounted him from. And I've never dismounted. I don't think I have from the left side. And so he misunderstands it a little bit. Like he knows that I've dismounted from him, you know, dismounted onto the barrel, but it's usually on the right side that I do it. So he was kind of looking for the sweet spot. And I was just kind of patient with him and let him find it. And he ended up kind of wanting to just keep it right at his shoulder the whole time. And I ended up having to concede and just dismount him when he got close to it. And that's okay. You know, he was ready to be done for the day. He was quiet. He stood still for me. It's really important that they stand still when you dismount. And once I get off of him, there's lots of petting, lots of rubbing on his face, lots of touching him all over, you know, hugging on him if I can, or any horse that I ride in general, you know, letting them know that, you know, thank you for a good ride. And the more you can touch them all over, the better their experience is. So I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you go back and check out part 1 if you didn't already. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.